Hey, what's up? This is Chosen, and in this video, we are going to do another class deep dive for Diablo Immortal. And if you want access to these resources like you see up on the screen, or if you want to be a part of a crazy team that we are putting together, obviously all the links are down below. You know the drill. So let's go over all of these abilities so that you can see the Necromancer laid out and see if it's maybe a class that you would like to enjoy playing. And then we'll also talk about maybe some of the abilities that I expect to be the best or the most commonly picked and all of that different stuff about one of the more popular classes that I anticipate for Diablo Immortal in the Necromancer. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so first up on top, we've got the description: a manipulator of life and death. The priests of Rathma use their powers over life and death to preserve balance in sanctuaries. So Necromancer, always a fan favorite because of the ability to summon minions, to blow up corpses, to do crazy things with the different enemies that you are slaying on the battlefield. Obviously an insanely fun champion to play and take advantage of all these different mechanics in the game. So let's kick it off by diving into the primary attacks. First, we have got Soulfire unlocking at level 1, and it's going to throw a ball of Soulfire that explodes when it strikes an enemy, inflicting damage to the target and 25% as much to all nearby enemies. And it's also going to have an ultimate ability called Hungering Soulfire, where we enhance Soulfire for 12 seconds, firing multiple greater bone spirits that are going to seek out enemies. Targets it multiple times will take 75% reduced damage. And then over on the right, I've got a little note that I do expect Soulfire to be the more common choice, but the other choice is going to be Bone Spear, unlocking at level 34. And we are going to shoot a Bone Spear which pierces forward up to 2 additional enemies and damage reduced by 50% each enemy that it has pierced, with the ultimate version being Dread Skull Scythe. We're going to enhance Bone Spear for 12 seconds, change to a Swinging a Large Scythe that deals damage to nearby enemies and knocks them back. It does sound cool and maybe does a little bit more damage in certain situations, but having to be melee, having to get up into the fray with the ultimate ability instead of just having the Hungering Soulfire flying all over, I do anticipate probably the more common one being Soulfire of these two. Then Command Skeletons is going to unlock at level 1. I love that the Necromancer gets that right out of the gate to dive in and try that mechanic with a cooldown of 8 seconds. Command your skeletal champions to charge to a location and increase their attack speed by 80% for 4.5 seconds with a passive. Raise a skeletal champion every 8 seconds up to a max of 4. I do love how they are making this more passively consistent, where you're just gonna kind of bring skeletons up, and I love that you can command them. So I expect this, like you see over on the right, to be a staple for most PvE Necro builds, allowing you an army of slow and squishy skeleton warriors. And you can see the Great Tab. I do expect that to be a very common ability that Necromancers are taking advantage of. Then Bone Spikes, going to be a control ability unlocking at level 8, and we're going to summon Bone Spikes that erupt up from the ground, stunning enemies for 2 seconds. Charging up increases the range and damage. So yeah, you like if you're kind of like playing on a phone or whatever, you hold down Bone Spikes and you charge it up, and then you release it, and the longer you let it charge, you're gonna get a little bit more utility out of it by the trade-off of having to sit there and charge it. It's gonna increase the range and the damage that it does. So I expect Bone Spikes to be a very solid CC ability that can also crank out a little bit of damage. Then Corpse Explosion, another staple of the Necromancer repertoire, gonna unlock at level 3. I love how some of these staple Necromancer abilities unlock early in the game. Cooldown of 1 second, gonna explode corpses in the target area to damage nearby enemies. Enemies struck by multiple explosions will take 40% less damage each time. And Corpse Explosion is gonna be a solid ability for clearing groups of enemies in Rift, with niche usage, because obviously if you're out of corpses or you don't have the enemies in the right positions to take damage from the utility Corpse Explosion provides, it could be pretty niche and hard to get consistent value out of. But in the right situation, in the right build, in the right group, and you're kind of clearing a bunch of mobs, obviously Corpse Explosion is going to do crazy amounts of work. Then Wraith Form, a buff unlocking at level 8 with a cooldown of half a second, transforming into a Wraith, gaining 50% increased movement speed and invulnerability for 2 seconds. Then over on the right, we see attacks are going to break Wraith Form, and obviously going to be useful in PvP scenarios or any sort of dangerous fight that you are in need of an escape. You know, it's probably going to be decently common because the Necro can kind of be up in the fray a little bit of a mixture in kind of how they play. So it's going to depend on the build and the play style, but that's obviously an amazing escape because you're going to transform into getting 50% increased movement speed and invulnerability for 2 seconds, which when you are in the heat of battle, especially feel like in a PvP situation, that is an eternity to have it in vulnerability for 2 seconds. Next up is Bone Armor, which is a buff unlocking at level 41 and a cooldown of 20 seconds to protect you and nearby allies with a shield of bones that absorbs damage for 12 seconds. Now, I do expect this to be a very good buff for raids and PvP. Very cool that it also applies to nearby allies as well. Just kind of passively absorbing damage for 12 seconds is a pretty decent amount of time. So Bone Armor, another solid choice for a buff. Next up is Bone Wall, a control ability unlocking at level 28 with a wall of bones that blocks movement and projectiles of all allies and enemies for 9.2 seconds, carrying a maximum of 3 charges. And then over on the right, one of the key abilities for PvP content and can be selectively great in PvE, with the downside that it is kind of difficult to place and maneuver around because it is going to block allies as well. So just something to keep in mind when you are running around dropping those bone walls, but it can obviously be very impactful if you've got the skill to pull it off in the right situation. We are also going to be getting Skeletal Mages for the Necromancer, a damage ability unlocking at level 20 with a cooldown of 14 seconds. Summon an immobile Skeleton Mage for 13 seconds that throws Soul Fire in a direction, hitting all enemies in the path. Cannot have more than 6 skeletal champions plus mages. So between your normal skeleton warriors and your skeleton mages, we're only going to be having up to 6 of them available on the battlefield at once. And something we definitely want to take note of is skeletal mages are immobile in Diablo Immortal as of right now. So that is definitely straying from the path of like Diablo 2, where your skeletal mages would run around and follow you. So you can probably use this to kind of like place a mage and then continue to move forward, while the mage that you place behind you in the area that you used to be is going to kind of clean up some of the trash that you left behind. Then Command Golem, mostly a control ability where we are going to summon a Bone Golem for 24 seconds. Now a big cooldown on this one of 36 seconds, by the way. Damages and stuns nearby enemies upon summoning can be commanded to leap, where it is able to deal damage and taunt nearby enemies for 6 seconds. So lots of skill in this one to kind of summon it at the right time and then aim it to leap where it is needed at the right time as well. So should be a versatile ability doing solid damage, stunning, and knocking back of enemies. Lots of CC going on this one. So as long as you've got the skill to actively pay attention and do this at the right time and have it leap to the right locations, I expect it to be a very impactful ability. Then Corpse Lance, a damage ability unlocking at level 38 with a cooldown of 1 second, summoning projectiles from corpses that hit the target and nearby other enemies. Each corpse summons 3 lances. Multiple hits on the same target will obviously deal a little bit of a reduced damage there. And this is obviously going to be a big damage ability with a big payoff, but the caveat of you're going to burn through those corpses really fast. And once they are out, you can no longer use the Corpse Lance because obviously there'll be nothing for it to develop a lance from. So big payoff and kind of a burst damage ability here with the Corpse Lance, but going to be a little bit niche and hard to really run it consistently. Next up, we have Grim Scythe, a damage ability unlocking at level 1 with a cooldown of 9 seconds, which is going to slash with a scythe, dealing damage to all enemies in that arc, which generates a corpse max of 2 and maximum of 2 charges. Now that is nice because you can generate corpses, so you keep that in mind to help you kind of have a good flow with the Necromancer, but it is short range and lacks ways to use the skill better, so there are probably going to be better options in a lot of the builds here, unless we see some changes coming to Grim Scythe. But if you're running a very corpse centric build and you really need to help maintain that flow, I could see people maybe going with that choice. Then one of the abilities that I think is looking insanely strong, that is Dark Curse, a control ability unlocking at level 44 with a cooldown of 12 seconds, cursing all enemies in the area, and then deals damage for 6 seconds and reduces their vision. So a lot of items can change the skill in vastly different ways, making it extremely versatile and a really great kind of control ability to have in any build and get consistent value out of, as long as you are dropping it in the right situation. Going to be really cursing the enemies and making them a lot easier for your whole team to deal with. And lastly, we have got Bone Spirits, a channel damage ability unlocking at level 47 with a cooldown of half a second. That is a continuous barrage of Bone Spirits that damage enemies. Using these spirits consumes energy, and then it will recover the energy when not in use. So the unfortunate thing is you are forced to remain stationary, causing it to be a group exclusive ability that can deal solid damage. So you're kind of standing there, you got a boss fight or something that's not going to be moving for a little bit. You've got your team in front of you. You can just kind of stand here and channel those Bone Spirits and do a bunch of damage. But given the fact that you have to remain still, it's going to be a little bit more niche and maybe not as common as some of the other stuff. So that is a first look at the Necromancer abilities that are going to be in the game. I'm looking forward to doing these for every single class. So make sure you click the subscribe button down below and also join the Discord if you want to be a part of great players talking the game, great content creators, and all of us working on different resources like this, hanging out in voice chat every day and talking about the game, getting super hyped up to absolutely crush the release of this game. So that'll do it for me on this one. And as always, thank you for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace.